space of games and how much choice it gave you and how much interactivity was there and how much atmosphere. But it was another one of those games that was just like life-changing.
And there was one other thing which was very important about this game, which I think Doom had, and you know, games like BioShock, or is like the very, very simple player motive, survive. And that is like for me, it's really strong. Like, you know, I'm locked somewhere and I have to escape and I have to, you know, survive basically. And that is a very, very simple story, but it just works because, like, you know, it's a very clear objective, and so I like that.
And Matthew, I'd like to open this question up to all of you guys. What modern games do you think are shaping the industry? What do you see like that's catching your eye, like that's kind of blazing a trail forward for the next generation of games, or the games that we see coming out in the next few years?
So my own personal favorites, or what
sure,
I think makes a big difference? Let's see. I'm totally not prepared for this, but the
I think you're supposed to say Rage.
yeah, Rage. Pretty much that's it now. It's so awesome, the ZeniMax family and the people we get to meet, like Insomniac, and to work with those guys. And for a long time, id was just id, you know, and we had a publisher, but that was it. But now with this larger family, getting to work with people like Shinji Mikami, who's the, you know, creator of Resident Evil, and, you know, the guys at Arkane, it's so interesting to see what those guys are doing. So of course, I'm a huge fan of Todd Howard and what's going on with Skyrim. And if you don't think, every time I look at that and any little secret demo we get or anything, it's highly influential. And I think the things those guys are doing, you know, not just because they're part of the family, it's amazing. I didn't see the demo today, but I think I know what was shown. And there's little things in there that may not have registered, but the way they handle you know, looking at the items you pick up and kind of moving the whole interface forward, it's just amazing. So I think, you know, that's going to be huge, what they're doing with those games. But also, in the recent past, obvious games like BioShock and then what they're doing with the new, you know, the new BioShock Infinite, that looks amazing. And the Batman was huge for me. When I played Arkham, I didn't know what to expect. I'm not even the hugest Batman fan or comic book fan or any of that, but I think the way they handled just about everything in that game was awesome. But that's not, I don't know if they're blazing a trail forward. I don't know if I can point to anything that is going to be something that everybody follows, but it's definitely influential, the way they handle it, simple game mechanics. It almost always goes back to reproving what you should have already known, but sometimes we lose our way. It doesn't have to be overly complex. You have to, you know, pick your battles and do them well. I think what's going to be really interesting is what happens with things like Minecraft, and what happens with the ability to make a lower price point game and have it downloadable on a system, and what the next round of consoles. And at some point, somebody's going to make some little move or Connect-like thing that actually matters to us, and you just have to keep your eyes open. It's going to change and change fast. So I don't have the answers, and I don't know what's right around the corner, but I know there's something.
I think it's interesting, like, I'll let you guys field the question as well, but the games you brought up, the games we brought up here, BioShock, a lot of the classic games that we're talking about kind of, you know, are that formula. You know, like even your games like Dishonored and stuff like that, Rage, Resistance, all kind of fall back on that high level of interaction and being able to kind of explore the world and tinker around in the world.
Yeah, but to be honest, it's personally as a gamer and of course making games and therefore wanting to make the games that I like, it's been incredible for me to when those kind of games came back, because honestly there's been a tendency those past years, because as technology was going up, then everybody was focusing more on the graphics and more on the things that would wow player at the first glimpse, but then like less and less on the depth. And and to be honest, like games like BioShock or Fallout and Skyrim, etc., they are very, very hard sales to publishers in general. You know, they always think, those games are too complex, people don't really, they're not that pretty, blah, blah, blah. So and they're weird or whatever. And so when BioShock came out, and then Fallout 3, and now Skyrim and all that, it's for me as a gamer, I'm just like, oh wow, I hope this is going to inspire more and more people to go back to those kind of games, because they're very important to me as a player.
For me, I think it's kind of, I don't want to learn new mechanics, say, but what I see is more interaction with environments and not just having things react contextually like it's a real breathing world, but having the player be able to change that context. So the games that these guys have worked on, in particular, I mean, Deus Ex and the Looking Glass games you guys talked about are huge parts of that. And yeah, Skyrim today was one of the things that amazed me, and I heard gasps in the crowd, was when he looked back at the waterfall and there was all the salmon spawning, like going up the wall. And then the idea that you can go and grab any of them and basically take that on as your food, and you could smoke it even. Not the smoking way, but like food smoking way. Those details were really amazing. And then, of course, the terrifying part was y'all's reaction to that demo, because I've never been around people yelling in the dozens or hundreds for Todd Howard to rape a horse. That was a real first. So kudos, guys.
Yeah, is the question, what are the most recent modern games? When does a modern period start?
This generation, or we could go back. PlayStation 2, Xbox.
Well, these guys have had some great answers. Like, obviously, I don't want to just say the same things over, but BioShock was a huge game for me. I loved it. But I'll choose something different. I love Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2, and the tight integration of co-op features. Fall off on a ledge, you literally can't get up until your buddy pulls you up. Like, that decision was a pretty bold decision, really, to like leave the player trapped hanging out of a window until his friend comes over and pulls him up. But the first time you see that happen in a very dramatic way, where the horde is coming and you can see your guy on the other side, you can hear him yelling, and you've got to like break away from defending this guy to like go try to pull that guy up. And the interlocking mechanics of the special zombies, like, I think it is like one of the most brilliant games ever made. Whether you play it alone with the bots, or whether you play it co-op with friends, or whether you play it versus, I mean, it like has so many things in it, and they're all so well done. And the way the drama manager, whatever you would call it, responds with periodic waves of zombies and mixes in specials, I think it's brilliant, and I'm glad I played it. I would also, Far Cry 2, oddly, is on my top 20 of all time list. I ended up beating my head against the wall for 6 hours or so, several times, starting it, stopping it, starting it, stop. I can't play this. And then one day, like 6 hours into a playthrough, it clicked in my head, and I had like leveled my character up with enough diamonds so my equipment was better, and something just clicked in my head where I knew I got to get back to the safe house now because I got to make my buddy rescue ready again. It all just clicked after a certain point, and it just became magic after that. And I probably played for like 60 more hours or something, completed the game. So there are other things like Red Dead Redemption. If you're a fan of spaghetti westerns, if you grew up on that stuff, there was something mythic about Red Dead Redemption that was powerful for me. But yeah, those three are great choices for me personally. Left 4 Dead, Red Dead Redemption, and Far Cry 2 probably.
And you brought up Left 4 Dead, and I saw a lot of people playing that last night. 2 a.m. I walked through the room back there, and a lot of people playing that, Team Fortress, some people playing Killer Instinct, which I thought was awesome. But were there any games like that you guys were obsessed with on a multiplayer front? Did you find that you just kept going back?
AVP for me. Alien vs Predator. The first one. Yeah, first one specifically. Second one was pretty cool too. But first one was just wow, this asymmetrical gameplay where you play 1 versus 8 or whatever, and it's just really fantastic. It was pretty fun for me.
Well, for me, it was we played a lot of Marathon at one of the offices I worked at, and had a good time with that. And then Team Fortress really was, like the original Team Fortress, spent way too many hours on that one as well in the office when we should have been working. Those games were great.
For me, I mean, yes, I work at it, and there's a reason why, but it started with Doom and running up the phone bills and BBSs back in the day. That's the first time I saw another person that somebody else was controlling. That was a huge deal. And right away I started modding, deathmatch maps. And we'd have tournaments and people get together. That's what Quakecon is all about. I mean, that's where it started. The first couple of Quakecons was, not as many people as in the room. And now it's huge, but it was about that, and of course, Quake, hours and hours online, that was such a huge deal. And of course, designing maps for that. And then recently I made the mistake, let me figure out what Call of Duty's all about. Let me see what's going on here. Why do people like it? And then, I prestige numbers of times and just spent a lifetime on there, and I get it. It's some of the same core mechanics, but I played a lot of that. And of course, Left 4 Dead's huge. And I wrote it down earlier on. It's like, we're not touching on online. That's just a huge thing. And where is that going to go? I think co-op has a long way to go, whether you're playing with your friends, how that's going to be integrated. I think in the next 10 years, we're going to see some things that we can't even come up with right now. Just that whole idea of being connected, everything from your avatar. You walk into the bar, somebody's playing a single-player game, and some of these things I want to do almost immediately, but the idea that your friend's playing the game, but he's in your single-player game, or you're hunting somebody down, and it's like the blurring the lines between single-player and multiplayer, so that's a pretty exciting proposition.
I guess I'd add one more thing out there, that the one thing that I really hate about our industry right now is the focus on graphics. That I think it's awesome when you play a great game with great graphics, but I love that games like Minecraft are out there where it is the game mechanic. It's not pretty. It's not a pretty game. One of the more fun times I've had was playing Red Faction Guerrilla a couple years ago, I guess now, and having that moment where I was totally trapped and running out of ammo, and there were guys all around me, and I had that aha moment of, wait, I have a hammer, and I can bust a hole through this wall. And that's really, talk about changing the context of the game. That's so much more important to me than making it super pretty and detailed and everything. But that's nice too, I guess.
I guess at this point, I'd like to open up some questions. We got a small enough room here. If you want to kind of walk up, if you have any questions for these guys on classic games, or if you just want to stand up, sure.
My question is surrounding the balance between what you've seen in the past with things like, you mentioned Doom and Wolf 3D and so forth. I mean, at the time, it was not, they weren't Atari, they weren't Sierra, and they were taking this huge risk on a format change, and were very successful as a result. Do you feel that there's this point where it's tough for your companies to do enough to risk it? I mean, just to, that you have to go away from the common first-person shooter or whatever is favored right now to make the next amazing change because of how memorable it will be? Meaning,
anyone?
Instead of becoming the first-person shooter or the first, multiplayer first-person shooter.
Right, I think I understand. Yeah, there's definitely, there's some risk associated with being innovative, and the way you handle that is tricky right now, because games literally cost more than movies. You can spend $100 million on a game. So there's definitely some risk there, but there's a lot of reward for the companies that are innovative. You can't really compare it to the early days, though. That was the garage band days. It wasn't about necessarily making money. It was some dudes sitting around in an apartment making games. So the risk wasn't there, really. It was just passion-driven. Hey, let's do this. Nobody else has done it. Now, if you want to, we talk about this all the time, how to stay innovative. And I don't know if we have all of the secrets, but you definitely have to make a conscious effort to recognize that innovation is going to come from creative people getting together and coming up with things. There's a reason why every year we go to GDC and there's Cabal this and Skunkworks that, and the ability to put a small group of guys together and come up with these really creative ideas, then have leadership that can recognize that and capitalize on it. It's still there. We still try to do that, but it's a much bigger challenge to be innovative. That's why you see a lot of safe bets. If one thing worked, you'll see we talk about the sequelitis and over and over, but it's not for a lack of effort from the developers. Even some of the games where we're more entertained probably by the more risky games. And I know that it sounds like we all appreciate those things, but we do have to recognize as an industry if there's a big pit